What's up guys, Kevin from Audi C7 owners, and today we're going to completely disassemble a 3.0T supercharger down to the casing so that I can try and port it. I'm not going to port it in this video. Today I'm just going to show you how to break it completely down so that you can also prep your supercharger casing to go get ported if you wanted to send it off or try and do it yourself. So we're going to jump into it. All right, everybody, so you can see I've got the supercharger here. This is not my OEM supercharger. This is a spare one I picked up from Lifetime Audi. Honestly, I got it just to get the used intercooler cores because you can't find the affordable replacement cores anymore, and I refuse to pay the Audi tax on new ones from Audi. So 225 bucks from Lifetime Audi got me the supercharger with some good used cores. That's already in the car. So now I have a spare supercharger to do what I want with, and I figured I will try and port it and do it a DIY kind of a thing. So here we are. Let's jump right into disassembly. You can tell it's already kind of partially disassembled. I've already got this intercooler core out. I've already kind of removed the IAT sensors on the left, right. There's one in the rear as well. Most of this stuff is very simple things. This is your crossover coolant pipe. We'll start with this. You guys are familiar. This goes to the front of your intercooler cores and attaches there with 6 bolts. These bolts are all T25, so 6 T25 bolts. Remove those. They shouldn't be on there very tight. Don't use any kind of like power tools. You don't want these to strip or anything, so just remove those 6, set them somewhere safe. I bet you guys didn't know that these were separate pipes that kind of connect to each other, so the more you know. So we're going to move these out of the way. Once you have those removed, then you've got your intercooler cores, but what we're going to do before we get to those is spin it around. Go to the rear here, and you're going to have your whole assembly of vacuum solenoids and things like that. Once again, this has already been disassembled, but I kind of put it back together so you guys could see. Before you try and remove this bracket, you need to remove this evap purge valve, and this connects into the top of the supercharger casing, and it's pretty tight in there. It's got this weird kind of clamp system on it, and you can see it right here. People have a lot of issues with this, and it's understandable why, but it's actually pretty easy to get off once you know. A lot of people say just pinch this, and this one's broken, but you pinch it to remove the 2 barbs that hook underneath this and pull it out. And that's one way to do it. You can try and pinch it and pull it out, but what I found is easier is get a hook, like a pick or something in there, and you just pop one side out and then lift up a little bit, and it'll keep that side out, and then take your hook or your pick and go to the back side and pop that one out, and then it'll come completely off. But those things on each side, they do hook into the bottom of this lip here on the supercharger, and it can be a little difficult, but play around with it and it should come off very easily. So pull that off. Once that is off, then you're going to have this bracket assembly here on the car, and it's held in by 3 T30 Torx bolts. And I've got them taped here, but there's one here, there's one here, and then there's one on the top. And you can't access that one on the top until you remove that evap canister purge valve thing. But so remove those 3 T30s, and then this will come off. What I would suggest though, there's an IAT sensor right. Let me move this out of the way. You've got a temperature sensor, air temperature sensor right here for post throttle body. I would suggest removing that before you try and move this out of the way because it can kind of conflict a little bit. And all of those IAT sensors, they're all T30 bolts. There's just 2 in each one of them. Remove them and then just gently wiggle that sensor out and it should come out pretty easily. I found it helps if you kind of twist it and then you get a little leverage on the bottom of the sensor to pull it off. So pretty self-explanatory, simple there. Once you get that out, remove the 3 T30s off the bracket, 1, 2, and 3, and then this will just come right off. So now we're getting down to the meat and potatoes of this thing. After you get that out, you want to remove your throttle body. Once again, you can see mine has already been removed. Your OEM throttle body has a spacer, you can see here, and that goes in between the throttle body and the supercharger. This is held in by 4 T30 bolts. They look like this. Once again, just use hand tools. You don't really need to use a impact or anything. You don't want them to get binded up in here because that has happened to me and it's not fun. So just remove those 4. This, if you haven't removed it in a long time, might be stuck in there. Just gently wiggle it. If you need to pry at it, be really gentle. Don't go digging in here. But yeah, once you get this off, you're down here to your supercharger. You have to remove your throttle body to remove your intercooler core on the passenger side bank. On the other side here, once you remove that bracket, you'll be completely clear to remove that intercooler core. And you can see that the gasket from that one's stuck to here, so I'll need to pry that off. We'll do that in a little bit. But give me a second to grab some tools, and I'm going to show you the fail-safe, easy way to remove an intercooler core without damaging it. If there's one tool that I would suggest every DIY Audi enthusiast has in their car at all times, it's going to be an OBD11 scan tool device. And for those of you that aren't familiar, this OBD11 tool is something that plugs into your OBD2 port, connects to your phone via Bluetooth, and allows you to do a multitude of functions. OBD11 gives you the freedom to monitor the health of your engine, transmission, and emission systems all through their easy-to-use app that you can download from any app store for your operating system that your cell phone uses. After creating an account and logging into the app, all you need to do is connect it via Bluetooth to the dongle. That should be plugged into your OBD2 port with the accessory power on for the vehicle. Now, while this app will work with the ignition turned on, a lot of the functions only work with accessory power mode only. From here, there are multiple options that you can choose from to diagnose the health of your vehicle. You can just do a comprehensive scan of all control modules by clicking the button in the middle of the app and allowing it to perform a full scan. And then from there, you can clear all of the found fault codes that are able to be cleared by holding the button. Or you could choose to target a specific module and go into that submenu, and you can just check the faults for that one by itself. While you're in that control module submenu, you can also explore the basic settings, adaptation values, as well as long coding options if you've got one of the pro versions of OBD11. Another incredibly useful tool that the OBD11 app offers are one-click apps. These apps are something that are basically like shortcuts to long coding. So if you're either unfamiliar with the long coding process or there's something you can't quite figure out, you can go into the menu of the OBD11 app, choose the one-click app of your choice, and then you basically just implement it, and it'll charge you a certain amount of credits that either come with your app depending on what version that you buy, or credits that you can purchase. So if you can see here in this video, I'm going to engage my needle sweep. You can see before there's no needle sweep when I turn on the vehicle. And then after using the one-click app, which only costs 10 credits for this, you can see that the needle sweep is now engaged. If you choose to subscribe to one of the Pro plans, then you will have the option of long coding, and you also have the option of using live data monitoring and other things like that. And these are extremely useful for your DIY enthusiast at home. OBD11 is licensed for use with all modern Volkswagen Audi Group vehicles, as well as BMW vehicles. Now, with BMWs, there are going to be certain restrictions on some of the Pro features that you can do. But having said that, you will save hundreds of dollars over the course of your vehicle ownership if you own an OBD11 device, in comparison to having to go to a dealership or another shop and pay diagnostic fees every time your car has a check engine light or anytime there's some kind of a performance hiccup. With OBD11, you can scan your car at home and you can fix your car at home in a matter of minutes. It's something that I've had in my vehicle for years, and it has come incredibly handy in all of my day-to-day functions in maintaining the health of my vehicle. So if you're interested, check the video description below for links to the OBD11 device. And as always, if you have questions, leave them in the comments below or shoot me a message. We're going to jump back into the video. The first thing to know about removing an intercooler core. One, we're on the back side, so this would be near the back of your engine. There are 6 T27 bolts that hold each of these intercooler cores in, so you need to remove those 6 T27 bolts first, and it will likely be stuck in there and not move at all. You won't be able to grab it and pull it away. It's going to be stuck in there, and that's because not only is there a gasket here, which you can see is kind of fused to the supercharger there, but on the other side of the supercharger, right here where it mounts in here, if I push this back, there's a little ridge inside there, and there's another gasket right here that sits in there. And when this goes in here, it pops into that gasket, and that's what creates an airtight seal here. Now obviously mine's coming in and out freely because I've already removed those gaskets, but I'll show you my fail-safe way to remove these, because what happens is a lot of people start pounding on the intercooler core to push it back, and they ended up denting the center of this or damaging the intercooler core, and then that crossover coolant pipe can't mount to this flush, and you'll have a coolant leak, so you won't be able to use that intercooler core again. So to get this out, you need two things. You need a piece of wood. I've got a cut piece of 2x4, and then you're going to need a mallet. Let me back this up. And all you need to do is get the supercharger somewhere steady, put that piece of wood right up against the intercooler core face, and then lightly start tapping it with the mallet. And what I'll do is that distributes evenly the force of the hammer across the entire face of the intercooler core. You can tap that until it's about in here. Once you have it pushed back to that point, it creates a nice gap. There goes my hammer. It creates a nice gap in the back, and from here you can usually grab it and slide it out. If it's really old and it's been there a while, you might have to use something to pry it out a bit. If you're going to use anything to pry, try not to pry on the inside lip of the supercharger. Bring it in from this way and just kind of push on the corner, because if you damage the corner of this at all, it's not really going to affect anything. But go in here and slightly pry and like do a little bit up here and then go to the bottom, do a little bit down there. That way you evenly pull this out. And when you pull it out, there's going to be a rubber gasket on the inside. Hopefully that doesn't damage for you, but you just pull it straight out and then set it somewhere. It'll probably drip coolant, so just be careful. But let me get that out of the way. So now, once again, we have these intercooler core gaskets on the back that are kind of stuck to the supercharger. So once again, we're just going to be super careful and get something really thin to get in here and pry it off without damaging the supercharger. And we're going to toss that in the trash. Do that on both sides. And then now we can start to work on our bypass valve and bypass noodle, whatever you want to call this. We're going to go ahead and remove that. To remove your bypass valve, it's actually really simple. There's 4 bolts that mount the noodle to the supercharger, and then there's 3 bolts that mount it all together to the neck of the supercharger, if you will. And there's this little separator gasket plate here. So if my mind serves me correctly, these are T30s, and they are. They're T30s for all 6. And just so I make sure I don't strip anything, I'm going to break these all by hand, and then I'll remove them with an actual drill here in just a moment. So let me get all of this removed and I'll be right back. All right, so we got all the bolts out. 3 long ones, those go into these that mount to the neck of the supercharger, and the 4 short ones that actually mount the boost noodle here to the main compartment of the supercharger. What I like to do to keep track of all my bolts is I'll take a piece of blue painter's tape and I'll wrap it around each of these, and I'll write, like, you know, T30 times 3 bypass valve, T30 times 4 bypass valve. So I know where these go, how many of them there are in case one gets lost, so I don't lose any of them, and it helps me keep track of everything. So do whatever you need to do to keep track of that. After that, we need to remove the boost noodle, and so this might be stuck on here really well if it's never been removed. I went ahead and took a small screwdriver and pried up underneath here, and it was able to get this off pretty easily. You can see there's a gasket here. It came out of this, so if this is really old and crusty, I would definitely suggest replacing these gaskets. For now, I'm just going to stick them back in to the prospective part so I don't lose them, just in case. But yeah, I'm going to set this somewhere safe. And then right here, the actual bypass valve itself just pops right off. There's a gasket on each side of this, but we're going to put this somewhere safe. And if you don't know, I've got a video on replacing this already, a DIY, and it shows you how to actually test this to make sure it's in good working order. So check that out if you think you have a bypass valve failure. All right, so there's nothing else that needs to be done here. We're not going to be removing anything out of this right now. I'm going to move on to removing little accessory pieces. So like the clips that hold on your engine covers, I'm going to remove this plate. Show you how to do that in a second. I'm going to remove the I guess you would say engine hoist attachments here, because I would like to paint this. If you're only porting this and not painting it, then you can leave these on. That's no big deal. Same thing with obviously your clip covers and things like that. So if you're not going to be painting, you don't have to take off every accessory, but I'm stripping this all the way down as much as I can, mainly because you can see this paint is starting to come off on this, whatever coating this one has. So let me go ahead and start getting on those. To remove these clips that hold on your engine covers, it's really simple. Just get a thin pair of needle nose pliers and pry up. And there's 4 of those, so just go ahead and take off each one of those. Once again, put them in a bag somewhere safe that you don't lose them if you care about having your engine cover. And then to remove the mounting points for an engine harness, you need an M10 triple square. I've got that right now. I'll start on this side because I got better leverage on it without affecting the camera. I am just going to hit this with an impact because I think they're going to be on there pretty tough. So there you go. There are 4 of those. So go around the supercharger, remove those. Once again, keep everything together, label it, mark it, whatever you need to do. Next is going to be removal of this plate here. This is like an identification plate where the part number and everything is on. Going to take that off to clean it up. Actually, before I actually remove it completely, if you guys care, these grommets are where 2 little fittings on your engine cover go into, and these are super simple to remove. Just get it up to where you can grab a lip and just kind of work it around. You can use a screwdriver to help you. These are just rubber grommets that push in there. So if that bothers you, you want those out for whatever reason, that's how you do it. To put them back in, you just press them in. Otherwise, there are 4 T30s here, and they should not be in there very tight. There you go. We're gonna remove all of these. Once again, label these, put them somewhere that you want. I'll probably just tape them to this plate, which looks a little bowed. Wonder what happened there. Unless there's just a natural curve. So you can see there's this, I guess that's a serial number for the Supercharger left there. And then the last part is the messiest and the most disgusting, and that is draining the Supercharger oil and pouring it out as much as you can, then removing the snout. This is where it gets messy. The Supercharger oil stinks. And yeah, let me prep for that and we'll get into it. Okay, so to prepare for this, I've left my Supercharger pulley on here. This is where my expertise, or whatever you want to call it, my lack of knowledge comes in. I don't think I need to remove this pulley to remove the snout because I don't think it actually goes through. I mean, I'm almost positive. I've seen some videos. You guys might call me stupid, whatever. I've never done this. Shut up. So we need to remove the drain plug, and that's right here, and that is a 3/16 hex head. And so I'm going to crack that loose. Make sure you have gloves on. I've got this set up, let me show you, over a drain pan off the edge of the table, so that hopefully I don't make a big disgusting mess, because this stuff is not fun. So make sure you don't strip this. We're gonna go slow. Got things on there tight. Let's try this. There we go. Got it loose. Oh, I just heard a little bit of gas escape there, a little bit of pressure maybe. Now I got this from Lifetime Audi. I am not sure if they have already drained the Supercharger oil. We're gonna find out when I tip it up, but that's what the actual plug looks like there. Set that off to the side, and then you just have to lift this up and flip it up over whatever you're gonna drain into. So let's see if anything comes out. A little bit, but I'm almost positive this has already been drained. Now, there's a little bit more coming out there. So the other thing I'll say about this, when you're draining this, if this isn't warm, it won't flow out very well. Now, since I'm disassembling this whole thing, I don't really care. I'm not just draining and refilling the oil. So I'm gonna go ahead and flip it over a couple more times, see what comes out, and then we'll work on removing the snout. After you've drained as much as you want to or can through the fill spout here, or the drain plug, go ahead and put that back in and tighten it down. You don't need to keep it out for any reason. And then we've got 8 10mm bolts to remove around the edge of the snout. So I'm gonna go ahead and work on that. Let's see how easy these come out. All right, come out pretty easily. So we got 8 of these. Gonna go ahead and get all of these out and be right back. By the way, that oil smells terrible. It smells like bad rancid milk or something, so don't get it on you. It's disgusting. All right, so we got all 8 of the 10mm bolts out of the snout. I am going to assume that this thing does not want to just come off. It is on there pretty tight, and I'm fairly certain there's some kind of like an RTV sealant there. So we have to pry this apart somehow, and I don't know how difficult that is going to be. So I'm going to work on this. I'll get it pried apart and tell you how I do it. Okay, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a lot of Supercharger oil dripping out here onto the bottom. That's because I started to get this snout pushed back. What I did was I flipped the Supercharger upside down, and there's a little lip here on the back that I could get a tool here to just start lightly tapping it out. And it started to separate and it's coming apart. So I'm gonna keep working on that and get this completely off. But there was a good amount of oil left in there, so make sure when you're doing this, you have some kind of setup like this so you can go straight into your drain pan. Okay, you can see it's separated from the Supercharger. Basically, I just use this, thick punch tool on the back of this lip here. And it's kind of weird because it looks like there's a spacer here. You don't want to tap on this. That's not supposed to come off the Supercharger. So we just want the snout off. And so I just tapped on the back of this slightly and went kind of back and forth between here and here. And it finally just kind of fell off. So make sure you grab your clock spring or whatever that is. This sits right here inside of your Supercharger snout. I set that here. But yeah, a lot more Supercharger oil came out. Some of it has pooled into here, so I'll need to clean that up. But we've got our gears for the actual blades, whatever you want to call them, inside the screws. There we go. So we're going to work on getting this cleaned up and get the rest of this stuff out of here. Smells so bad. All right, so before we jump into the very last step of this disassembly, I want to talk about what I did once I got that snout off. The first thing I did was I just held the snout over my drain pan and I sprayed a bunch of brake clean in there to clean it out. Same thing with this spring in here that goes into the snout. And then I sprayed into the cavity here of the supercharger to clean out any other supercharger oil bits. Make sure it's nice and clean, it's dried. The oil looked really good in the supercharger. There's no little metal fragments or anything. Everything looks really healthy in this, so really pleased to see that. But now we need to remove the screws. So remember this piece I told you we're not gonna tap on when we were removing the snout? That's because we need to remove it now, because this holds the gear assembly and the actual screws inside. So once again, you can see when you look under here, there's more RTV sealant that holds this to the supercharger and seals it. So I'm gonna get my punch tool again, and we're gonna start tapping this and see how it works. I'm not hitting it super hard, just little taps. Don't want to really go crazy on it. Keep in mind this supercharger and assembly is aluminum, so it's soft. You can see that little divot where I just tapped it there. It's starting to come out. I'm gonna keep going back and forth so we get even taps. All right, I can tell I can pull it out by hand now. So I'm gonna reposition the camera so you can see me pull this out. All right, I'm gonna very gently pull this out. And woof. That looks like some very well used rotor screws there. I am not sure if these are still good or not. Honestly, I've never even seen a picture of them that worn, I guess you would say. I don't know what you would say, but moves just fine. But yeah, so we got this out. I'm gonna set these down. Let me wipe up my hands and I'll show you what the inside looks like. Okay, so we've got the casing fully disassembled. The only thing that I haven't gotten out are those two things right there and right there. Those are your bearings for the rotor assemblies, and those require a special tool to remove, and I heard they're not a lot of fun to do that. So I need to look into getting that tool to remove those and replace those, and when I do that, I'll just film my own video on that. But we got the supercharger upside down right now. This is a common area that gets ported in a lot of race ports. They kind of clear this out a little bit. And then up here, this bottom area of the sides of the bearings there, those get ported down a little bit. You don't want to port the top part up here at all. You just, you don't really want to mess with this part either. You don't have a lot of material to work with there. Some people will go and they'll port the whatever you want to call this air intake. This is what goes over your intake manifold. Your supercharger intercooler cores are in there to get a little bit more flow through there. And then obviously the biggest one is porting the inlet to the supercharger here. So that'll be an entire other video. Get this turned around. Hope this video was helpful and useful to you guys. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. If I did anything excruciatingly wrong, let me know. Once again, never done this before, just decided to try it. Took me all said and done, probably about 30 minutes to get this completely disassembled, so not that bad. I'm gonna go put everything away, make sure it's all labeled so I can find it at a later time, and we'll see you guys on the next video.